Hey folks, everything new under the sun. Back with my regular microphone, hoping it sounds better. Here is some general speculation, conjecture on Donald Trump and Ezekiel 38. Now, I've spoken of this before, and I've told this before. These are just my thoughts. I don't have specific biblical references to back up anything to do with Donald Trump being in power in the last days or during the time of the Ezekiel 38 prophecy. But what I think here, I think this is interesting in terms of Trump's background and how he could be used of the Lord to take America, the United States, through a particular situation. So let's take a look at Ezekiel 38, and I'll kind of walk you through what I'm thinking here. And again, I've spoken of this before. Let's make sure you can see this. Let's go there. And so this is Ezekiel 38 from BibleGateway.com. Son of man, set thy face against Gog of the land of Magog. So this is the leader and the land of Magog from the north parts. Some people argue that it's Turkey or Russia, whatever it may be, a party from the north, to come against Israel. It says, the chief prince of Meshach and Tubal, and prophesy against him, and thus says the Lord God, behold, I'm against thee. So it's a people in a group that God is against. They are evil in the sight of the Lord, and God is against them for some reason. And what is God going to do? Well, he's going to use them for his purposes before he destroys them, which is interesting, right? God often uses enemies, evil nations, to teach Israel a lesson, to teach the people of God a lesson before those people are destroyed or punished or the wrath of God falls on them. So God's going to use this Gog in the land of Magog and associated people that come from the north for a purpose, and then he's going to destroy them in these Ezekiel 38 prophecy. And I will turn these back and put hooks in thy jaws. So there's going to be a catch. There's going to be something that's going to draw them into a war against Israel, seemingly against their will. When you put a hook in the jaw, that's like putting a ring in the nose of an animal, an ox, for example, to lead them around. You lead them around by the nose. So they don't want to go in that direction, but you lead them around. So put hooks in thy jaw, and I will bring thee forth all thine army, horses and horsemen. Now, is this literal or simply a description of, from the writer's point of view of what he saw in this prophecy, in this vision? Horses and horsemen, all of which are clothed with all sorts of armor, even a great company with bucklers, shields, and all of them handling swords. Now, I suggest to you that, in fact, this is literal, and there's a reason why people are using swords and horses at this time. Maybe because World War III just happened, and electromagnetic pulses have been used, and they have no mechanized options anymore for warfare. Maybe all the electronic components of the tanks, of the drones, have been destroyed, and they're coming against them like with old-fashioned weapons of war. Something to think about. So then it goes on to describe the nations here: Persia, Ethiopia, Libya, all of them with shield and helmet, Gomer and all his bands. And after many days thou shalt be visited. So this is just a detail suggesting that it's in the last days. We are in the last days. In the latter years, it says, we are absolutely in the latter years. Thou shalt come into the land that is brought back from the sword. Now, Israel is in the land that was brought back from the sword, back in the land 1948, from 2,000 years of diaspora. It says, which have been always waste, against the mountain of Israel, which have always been waste. They've been gathered out of many people. They were dispersed 2,000 years ago. They brought back to the land, which was a waste, and they become a nation again. But it is brought forth out of the nations, the Jewish people, kept their Jewish language, kept their history, and they were all brought back from various nations, including the United States, including Russia, all over the world into a nation, making Israel a nation. Now, that's a pretty significant prophetic fulfillment. Thou shalt ascend and come like a storm. Thou shalt be like a cloud to cover the land. Now, that could be a technology statement. You talk about what looks like a cloud in terms of militaries coming to a nation. And you could suggest that maybe a cloud of drones, 1,000 drones, or 1,000 missiles may look like a cloud, right? So that's another interesting statement. I'm not suggesting I know the exact answer, but Let's proceed. And thou shalt come again. Thou shalt say, I will go up to the land of unwalled villages. I will go to them at rest. It's a time of peace that this has happened at. Maybe just after World War III, just after the Antichrist comes in and says peace and safety. Maybe all of them dwelling without walls. Maybe there's a deal made by the Antichrist, and they do have that peace and safety, and because they've just been through just went over the precipice of thermonuclear war. Maybe nations are recovering, or nations are destroyed because of economic collapse. But it says to take a spoil, to take a prey, to turn thy hand upon the desolate places that are now inhabited, speaking of Israel as a nation, and upon the people that are gathered out of the nations. So again, Israel becoming a nation in the last days, 1948, which have gotten cattle and goods. Israel is one of the richest nations in the world because of all the produce, because of the blessings of God, and they were a very rich, prosperous nation. Sheba and Dedan, the merchants of Tarshish, with all the young lions thereof, shall say unto thee, Art thou come to take a spoil? Hast thou gathered thy company to take a prey and to take away silver and gold? So Sheba and Dedan, the merchants of Tarshish. This is the merchants of Britain, or the country known for tin. And so these are the young lions of Britain, many folks have suggested. And so what are the young lions of Britain? That's the Commonwealth countries, Australia, Canada, United States. So the young lions, we'll say in the United States because they're the world leading country, the strongest, the most powerful, this current superpower. And so the young lion of the nation of Britain, the merchants of Tarshish, United States, is saying to them, have you come to take a spoil? And note that the United States is kind of the last big nation that actually backs Israel in the last days and will be the last to fall, I think. So they're asking the question when the leader Gog and the land of Magog invade from the north, with all the associated countries as listed in Ezekiel 38, when they come against Israel, this country will say, have thou come to take a spoil? They're just saying things. They're probably standing at the United Nations and saying, what are you doing, Russia, or what are you doing, Turkey, whomever is leading it? Are you taking a spoil? Are you basically taking their riches? It also describes a time, an economic collapse time, when maybe a country feels desperate and has to go in to Israel because they are blessed with food and with gold and silver. So this likely comes after some sort of economic collapse where a country feels like it needs to. Right now, Russia is pretty rich, all things considered. The government, at least, Putin has lots of money. They have lots of oil riches. So right now, they don't need to invade Israel, certainly to take silver and gold away to get cattle and goods. They got lots of food. So that it seems to come at a time, probably just coming out of war, and all the resources have been drained. The food has been drained. An economic collapse has just happened. So there's no money, there's no food or anything, and they're going down because they're desperate. Now, this idea of the merchants of Tarshish and the young lions thereof, and that's speaking about the United States. I'll suggest to you that Donald Trump getting in at this point in time is interesting because he happens to be a businessman. He's not a politician. He is a businessman. He has had many businesses, and it looks as though he will win the presidency. And I'll tell you why. It says, this is an article from allisrael.com. Momentum shifting toward Trump. U.S. presidential race too close to call, but experts say they detect dynamic change away from Harris towards Trump. Now, Trump, again, as I say, is a businessman. He's not a great politician. In fact, he's a bad politician. He says a whole bunch of things you wouldn't expect to say. He shoots from the hip. He doesn't have nice, polished vocabulary or words that he uses or taglines, speaking points. He just goes and speaks from his heart, and that's a lot of the time why people don't like him, because he's not a politician. But he is a good businessman. He has made millions building skyscrapers and all sorts of things. But with that, he also has experience with bankruptcies. Now, this is thoughtco.com, and it's talking about Trump, why Donald Trump's companies went bankrupt. And what I think is interesting here is not that they went bankrupt, but that he is a businessman. He is very smart. He's gained a lot of wisdom and experience from his companies, and he's gained a lot of experience about bankruptcies. And I think why the United States, if it is the United States, being a part of the young allies of Tarshish, why are they simply asking a question and not coming to Israel's to save Israel or to protect them or to battle for them? Is because as a nation, the United States is destroyed. And if that comes at the end of World War III and complete economic collapse, the United States may not have the ability or the willpower or the money to come to the rescue of Israel. So wouldn't it be interesting if the United States, holding on to some sort of blessing because they still support Israel, that they're destroyed financially, but God has put in place a particular leader who has dealt with, who is not a politician, but is a good businessman to bring the country out of economic collapse and basically contain them as a nation, for what's left over. And Trump, with the experience with all these bankruptcies, that's literally what's going to happen with economic collapse. When that happens, the United States will go bankrupt. They simply owe too much. So as a nation, to have a leader in place that's not a politician, that knows how to deal with bankruptcies, would be important. And again, maybe that's why, whoever is left standing in the United States at this time is right inside economic collapse. And so to have a leader that knows how to deal with that is good. And you might suggest that God maybe has him in that place for such a time as now. That suggests that when this happens, that economic collapse is near, because that would suggest that it's possibly in the next 4 years if Trump gets into office. That would be the timeline. Trump has filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy for his company 6 times. 3 casino bankruptcies came during the recession in the early 1990s and the Gulf War, both of which contributed hard times in Atlantic City, New Jersey's gambling facilities. He also entered a Manhattan hotel and 2 casino holdings companies into bankruptcy. And he's many times he's pulled them through that as well. So he has managed bankruptcy, and so he could be kind of the perfect kind of business leader, the practical business leader that the United States needs at a time when the world is going through World War III and economic collapse. And also, he would be the guy you would want in should there be World War III. You want a strong figure like that who is going to be able to protect the American people, protect the citizens, and govern accordingly, right? So again, I said it before, and I've likened it to Ezekiel 38, and with the suggestion that, if there is economic trouble, and that's what verse 12 speaks to, a nation going in because they have to, because they're taking the spoil, cattle, food, and everything. There's economic collapse, there's supply chain collapse. Countries are rebuilding after World War III. It would make sense that the U.S. would do better with a leader who could manage the country's way out of total collapse, chaos, and bankruptcy. And so that would be interesting if that were the case. That's my speculation, my conjecture on the Trump and the timing. I don't know if that's true or not. I guess we'll certainly see. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Do you think God has him in such a place and likely to take over the presidency for such a time as now, maybe getting the country ready for some sort of economic collapse that he and only he might be able to bring the country out of with his experience with bankruptcies and business sense? And that would be, to bring it back to Ezekiel 38, does that mean the United States is still standing, though not very strong, when Ezekiel 38 happens, and is not destroyed as a nation completely, but there is a remnant, if you will, if I can use that word, left in the United States after what seems to me like World War III and economic collapse, which allows for nations to invade Israel during that period. So those are my thoughts. Just come rambling on about Bible prophecy and the interesting figure that Trump is, the polarizing figure that he is. Is he being used by God? Is he not? Is he just a crazy fascist, like some people like to say? I like to look at it and say, what is God doing in this situation? And I guess that's what I see as a potential option there. Let me know in the comments what you think. Thanks for watching. I'll leave it there. We'll see you in the next video.